I never wanted another birthday dinner, not after the last one. But when your youngest daughter looks at you with those pleading eyes, the same ones your late mother had, you find yourself saying yes, even when every part of you wants to stay by the lake, in the quiet. So there I was, 61 years old, back in Charlotte on a damp Saturday evening, the skyline glowing like a promise I didn't trust anymore. My daughter Lily had picked a small restaurant downtown, one of those places where everyone speaks softly and the napkins are folded like origami. She meant well. She always does. I'm Charles Fletcher. I used to build things, companies, houses, a family. Now I mostly repair what's left. I live alone by Lake Wylie, a few miles from the city, where the only sound that matters is the wind through the pines. That lake became my boundary after the divorce between who I was and who I refused to become again. When I walked in, the first thing I saw was her, Evelyn, my ex-wife. Perfect posture, pearls around her neck, voice like honey that's gone sour. She hadn't changed. If anything, she'd learned to weaponize grace. Sitting beside her was our son, Daniel, 34, still dressing like the kind of man he thinks his mother wants him to be. Navy blazer, polished shoes, and that look of quiet exhaustion I know too well. "Charles," Evelyn said, rising halfway from her chair, "you look rested." "Just older," I said, taking my seat. We exchanged the kind of smile that hides more knives than warmth. Dinner began with the usual pleasantries. Lily told stories about her new job in Asheville, Daniel nodded at the right times, and Evelyn steered the conversation like she was conducting a board meeting. For a moment, I thought maybe it would stay civil. Then the server poured the wine, and Evelyn leaned toward Daniel. It was just a whisper, barely audible over the clinking glasses, but I saw the way Daniel's hand froze midair, how his jaw tightened. "While everyone's here," she said softly, "go change your father's locks tonight." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. But Daniel stood up a few minutes later, excusing himself with an awkward smile. "Just need to handle something," he said. Lily frowned. "On Dad's birthday?" He kissed her cheek, murmured something about being right back, and left. Evelyn's eyes followed him, calm and calculated. I didn't ask. I'd learned long ago that Evelyn's plans reveal themselves soon enough. I just kept cutting my steak, pretending the air hadn't gone cold. The conversation stumbled on. Lily talked about her new apartment in Asheville. Evelyn corrected her grammar. The waiter brought dessert, pecan pie, my favorite, and nobody touched it. I looked around the table and thought how strange it was to feel lonely in a room full of your own blood. Nearly an hour passed. The rain outside turned heavier, drumming against the windows like a warning. Lily scrolled through her phone, trying to fill the silence. Evelyn sipped her wine and glanced at her watch, the gesture of someone waiting for confirmation. Then the door to the restaurant opened, and Daniel stepped back in. His face was white as the tablecloth. His eyes darted toward me first, then to his mother. "Daniel," Evelyn asked, her tone sharp with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "What is it?" He stood there, soaked from the rain. The entire room seemed to hush. "Dad," his voice trembled, "there are police cars outside your house." The fork slipped from Evelyn's hand and hit the floor with a soft clang. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just looked at her, the woman who'd spent years mastering control, and for the first time, I saw something crack behind those perfect eyes. And somewhere deep down, I already knew. This wasn't about the locks. By the time I reached Lake Wylie, the rain had turned to mist, clinging to the pines like smoke. The flashing red and blue lights were visible half a mile before I pulled in. My house, the one place that had always been quiet, looked like a crime scene from someone else's life. I parked on the shoulder. The gravel crunched beneath my boots as I walked toward the gate, now wrapped in bright yellow tape that fluttered in the wind. A young officer stepped forward, hand up. "Sir, I'm sorry. This area is restricted." "I live here," I said, showing my ID. "Charles Fletcher." He checked it, then lifted the tape just enough for me to duck under. "Detective Grant's inside. He'll brief you." The air smelled of wet wood and mud. The porch light flickered weakly, the way it always did when the weather turned. I'd meant to fix it, but somehow I never got around to it. Inside, the house felt colder than it should. The door frame was splintered, the lock twisted out of shape. Detective Grant was standing in the living room. Late 40s, trench coat damp at the shoulders, eyes that didn't waste movement. "Mr. Fletcher," he said, extending a hand. "Sorry to meet under these circumstances." "What happened?" I asked. He glanced around the room before answering. "Someone forced entry between 7 and 8 p.m. Nothing appears stolen, no electronics missing, no drawers ransacked." He nodded toward the table. "But whoever broke in left that." I followed his gaze. On my dining table lay a worn leather folder, the kind used for corporate records. I hadn't seen it in years. It used to sit in my office at Fletcher Holdings before I stepped away. The company's crest was faintly embossed on the corner, F&F Group. A single sheet of printer paper rested on top. In plain black font, it read, "Tell her the truth won't stay buried this time." The words hit harder than they should have, not because I understood them, but because I knew who they were meant for. "Do you have any idea what this means?" Grant asked, studying my face. "Not yet," I said quietly. He lifted the folder and flipped through a few pages. Old financial reports, real estate deeds, corporate filings, most dated between 2016 and 2020. He tapped one document. "All in your name." "I haven't touched those in years," I said. He gave a slow nod, the kind detectives use when the story only half fits. "We'll run fingerprints, but the person who left this was careful. Gloves, likely." However, he pulled a small tablet from his pocket. "We traced a payment connected to the break-in. The suspect withdrew cash 2 days ago from an account flagged in a different investigation." I looked up. "Whose account?" He scrolled through his screen, then exhaled. "Evelyn Fletcher." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The room seemed to tighten, air pulling in like a held breath. She paid someone to break in here?" "That's what the records suggest. The transfer was small, hidden through a service company, but it leads back to her. We're confirming the rest." I turned toward the table again. The folder, the message, "Tell her." It wasn't meant for me at all. Grant studied me carefully. "You divorced how long ago?" 8 years, but she still runs the company we built together." His brow furrowed. "And you have no idea why she'd hire someone to come here?" I looked down at the papers, my name scrawled across pages I'd never signed, and felt something shift inside me. The rain tapped against the windows, steady as a pulse. I finally met his eyes. "Mr. Fletcher," Grant said slowly, his tone sharpening, "is there any reason your ex-wife would pay someone to break into your house?" I didn't sleep that night. The folder stayed on the table, its papers spread like open wounds across the wood. Every time I looked at them, something old stirred inside me, something I thought I'd buried the day I left Charlotte's skyline behind. By morning, the lake was still. Mist hovered over the water, turning the world pale and uncertain. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen counter, and started reading. The first page was a ledger. Rows of numbers, dates, account names. Fletcher Holdings. My old company. The same name that had once meant family, stability, and now, deception. Evelyn had kept the business after the divorce, claiming it was too complicated to divide. I didn't fight it. I'd had enough battles for one lifetime. But here it was again, crawling back from the grave. Half the documents were copies of filings I remembered. The other half I'd never seen before. My name appeared on them in neat cursive that looked just like mine, only it wasn't. Invoices, transfers, property acquisitions in counties I'd never visited. Hundreds of thousands moved in small increments, quiet, deliberate, invisible. It hit me then. This break-in wasn't about stealing anything. It was about planting something. I opened the folder's inner pocket and found another sheet tucked between manila covers. It was a notice from the IRS, dated 6 months ago, addressed to me. I remember tossing it aside when it first arrived, assuming it was some bureaucratic mistake. Evelyn had always handled the taxes for the company. I trusted she'd filed everything right. But the notice mentioned discrepancies, unreported income, transactions tied to my personal Social Security number. I exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that feels like it leaves the bones hollow. I stood, walked to the cabinet where I kept a small metal box, old records, bank statements, the remnants of a life I'd tried to forget. I spread them across the kitchen island. Side by side, the handwriting matched almost perfectly. Almost. There was one small difference. A loop on the C of Charles, slightly exaggerated. Evelyn never noticed that detail. She'd been mimicking my signature from documents decades old. I poured another cup of coffee and stared at the papers, the numbers, the falsified signatures until the lines blurred. The phone rang. Detective Grant. "Mr. Fletcher, we pulled the bank records. That payment to the suspect was hidden through a business account tied to Fletcher Holdings. We're checking if your name's attached." I forced my voice steady. "It will be. Everything she's done has my name on it." "You sure?" "I'm sure," though part of me still hoped I was wrong. After we hung up, I drove into Charlotte. The streets looked cleaner than I remembered. Emptier, too. I stopped outside the old Fletcher Holdings building, a tall, glass-fronted monument to the life Evelyn wanted more than love. Her car was there, the same silver sedan she'd driven for years, parked perfectly between the lines. Through the window, I could see her office blinds drawn tight. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. The truth was already waiting back home, under that folder. That night, I lit a small fire in the fireplace and sat on the floor beside it, reading until my eyes burned. Then I found it. A contract, dated October 2018, bearing my signature, my name, my handwriting. Only, in October 2018, I was lying in a hospital bed, recovering from surgery. I could barely hold a pen. The paper trembled in my hands. "She's been using my name," I whispered to the empty room. The flames cracked softly, reflecting in the glass window like distant lightning. For years, I have learned that silence is its own kind of weapon. You just have to know how to use it. So I stayed quiet. Didn't call Evelyn, didn't ask questions, didn't accuse. She thrived on reaction. Always had. If I gave her nothing, she'd start to wonder what I knew. That's when people like her make mistakes. For 3 days, I pretended life was normal. I fixed a loose step on the porch, walked the lake trail every morning, nodded to the neighbors. But every night, when the house went still, I'd unlock the small cabinet in my study and pull out what was left of my old records. Most of it was dust, ledgers from the 90s, expired insurance forms, letters from our first accountant, Harold Mason. Harold had been with us from the start. He died 5 years ago, and Evelyn handled the company transition herself. At the time, I'd been too tired to care. Now I saw the hole his absence left behind. I opened one of his last folders. There were photocopies of emails between him and Evelyn, simple bookkeeping stuff. But one line caught my attention. Please confirm Charles has approved this transfer. It exceeds the agreed threshold. Her reply, typed neatly beneath, read, Of course. He signed off personally. I hadn't. I leaned back, rubbed my temples, and looked at the ceiling. Every thread I pulled led to her. Every lie bore my name. The next day, I drove into town to use a computer at the public library, less traceable than my own. I logged into an old email account I hadn't touched in years. She must have thought I'd forgotten about it. But people like Evelyn forget one thing. I was the one who built the system she learned to abuse. I searched Fletcher Holdings, filtered by date, and found dozens of archived messages flagged by the IRS years earlier. Warnings, audits, inquiries, all sent to my email, all forwarded immediately to hers. She'd intercepted them before I ever saw them. I printed everything, page after page, and slipped them into a new binder. The folder grew heavier, but so did the quiet inside me. That evening, as the light faded over Lake Wylie, the phone rang. It was Lily, my youngest. Dad, are you okay? You sound far away. I'm fine, I said, though I wasn't. There was a pause, then a sigh. Mon's been acting strange. She keeps pacing around the house, locking her study. Daniel said she burned a box of old papers in the fireplace. My hand tightened around the receiver. When? Last night. He said she looked scared. It was the first time my daughter had ever used that word about her mother. After we hung up, I walked outside. The lake reflected the last of the day's light, soft and gold. I thought about how fear always finds its way back to the people who trade in lies. Maybe Evelyn finally realized the walls she'd built to trap me were closing in on her instead. When the stars came out, I went back inside, poured a glass of water, and sat at the table. I started listing everything I had: emails, signatures, bank transfers. The truth was taking shape, quietly, piece by piece. A knock at the door broke the stillness. It was past 9. I opened it to find Detective Grant, coat collar up against the cold. Evening, Mr. Fletcher. Sorry to bother you this late. Something new? I asked. He nodded, pulling a file from under his arm. We found another transfer. Same account, same pattern. He hesitated before finishing. Same signature, yours. The house seemed to hold its breath. I met his eyes. Not mine. The knock came mid-morning, sharp and deliberate, the kind that doesn't wait to be invited. I knew before I opened the door who it would be. Evelyn stood there in a gray wool coat, hair pulled tight, lipstick perfect as ever. She held a leather purse against her chest like a shield. Behind her, the lake shimmered pale under the winter sun. "Charles," she said softly, her voice the same calm she used with judges and board members, "you shouldn't be dealing with the police alone. They'll twist everything you say." I stepped aside, not to invite her in, but to let the air move between us. You always did hate being left out of the story." She entered without waiting. Her heels clicked across the floor, 3 beats and a pause, the rhythm of command. She looked around, scanning for clues of how much I knew. "You've let this house go," she said, brushing dust from the mantel. "You were never good at maintenance." I didn't answer. I just watched her circle the living room like a lawyer preparing for trial. "I spoke with Daniel. He said the police are sniffing around Fletcher Holdings. They think someone used your name on transfers. Charles, you know how these things work. Once they start digging, they'll find mistakes from both of us. We can fix this quietly. Together." "Together," I repeated. The word tasted foreign. She smiled that patient smile. "You always overreact. You've forgotten how brutal business can be. Paperwork gets messy. Maybe a signature was misplaced. You forged my name." Her breath caught, barely. I took a step closer. "You used my house, my name, and you still think you can control the story?" For a moment her mask faltered. Then she laughed, soft and dismissively. "You're being paranoid, Charles. You've always been too emotional. You're 61, living alone, and now the police show up, you start seeing conspiracies. Then why did you pay someone to break in here?" Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do," I said quietly. "Grant traced the transfer, the same account you used for the off-books acquisitions. You should have known I'd keep the old ledgers." She crossed her arms. "You'll ruin this family if you keep digging." I shook my head slowly. "You already did." For a time, silence fell between us. Real silence, not the kind filled with performance. Outside, the wind pushed against the glass. The house groaned like it remembered everything. Evelyn broke the stillness. "Do you think anyone will believe you? You've been retired for years. Your memory isn't what it was. I've been running that company, keeping our name respectable. Our name or yours?" Her nostrils flared. "You were never built for this world, Charles. You're too honest." "I'll take that as a compliment." She stepped closer, the scent of her perfume cutting through the dust and old pine. "You always said you wanted peace. You still can have it. All you have to do is keep quiet. Let me clean this up." "I think you've cleaned enough." Her lips tightened, the softness drained from her voice. "If you take this to court, I'll make sure you regret it." I met her eyes, steady as the lake behind us. "Maybe," I said, "but this time, it won't be my lie that hurts us." Her hand trembled just slightly before she turned and walked out, closing the door with the precision of a final verdict. The echo lingered long after she was gone. It was late afternoon when I saw Daniel's car pull into the driveway. The sun was sinking behind the pines, cutting the light into shards that flashed across his windshield. He sat there for a full minute before getting out. I could tell, even from the porch, that something was eating at him. He walked up slow, shoulders tense, one hand buried in his jacket pocket. When he stopped in front of me, he pulled something out. A single folded sheet of paper. The same message that had been left on my table days ago. "Tell her the truth won't stay buried this time." His voice shook when he spoke. "That message, I left it." For a long time, neither of us said a word. The wind moved through the trees, the same way it used to when he was a boy running barefoot through this yard. I looked at him, my son, now a man with the same stubborn jaw I used to see in the mirror. "You'd better come inside," I said quietly. We sat at the kitchen table, the one Evelyn once insisted on buying because it looked professional. Funny how that mattered more to her than family dinners ever did. Daniel placed the note on the table, flattening it with trembling hands. I didn't know what else to do. When Mom asked me to change your locks that night, I thought she just wanted to keep you from something. I didn't realize until I got here. He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the table. The police cars, the tape, that folder. I saw it before they arrived. I shouldn't have gone inside, but I did. What did you see, son? He hesitated, then looked up. Papers with your name. Contracts, bank records. I recognized some of the company files Mom used to keep in her office, but they looked wrong, different. I think she was going to plant them, Dad. Make it look like you'd been hiding money. When I saw what she was doing, I panicked. I left the note and called the police anonymously. I thought it would scare her off before she could finish it. His confession hung heavy between us. I didn't yell. I didn't ask why he hadn't told me sooner. The truth had already cost him enough. You did the right thing, I said finally, even if it took you a while. His eyes filled. I just wanted her to stop. I thought maybe if she got caught, she'd finally let go of all this. She won't, I said quietly. Not until the truth forces her to. He leaned back, voice breaking. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have warned you. I should have said something years ago. I reached across the table and rested a hand on his arm. Your mother's good at making people feel responsible for her choices. I know that better than anyone. He nodded, but the guilt still clung to him. Outside, the lake shimmered in the fading light, soft ripples moving across the surface like unspoken words. The same lake that had reflected his childhood laughter now mirrored the weight he carried as a man. I stood, walked to the window, and watched the sun disappear behind the tree line. She's been trying to bury the truth for years, I said, more to myself than to him. Then I turned, voice steady, eyes fixed on the horizon. Your mother tried to bury the truth. I'm going to dig it up the right way. Daniel said nothing, but I saw the first trace of relief in his face, a man who'd finally stopped lying to himself. The light outside faded to blue, and somewhere in that quiet, I realized the storm was no longer coming. It was already here. The morning I drove back into Charlotte, the sky was the same color as steel, cold, hard, and final. In the passenger seat beside me sat a leather briefcase, one I hadn't used since the day I retired. Inside was everything: copies of bank statements, printed emails, contracts with my forged signature, and a letter I found tucked among Harold Mason's old records. His handwriting was shaky, but clear. Charles, if you're reading this, I may be gone, but I hope you'll forgive my silence. Evelyn has been altering company ledgers. I stayed quiet out of fear. I'm sorry. By the time I reached the precinct, the briefcase felt heavier than lead. Detective Grant met me at the door. "Morning, Mr. Fletcher," he said, his tone softer than usual. "You ready?" "I've been ready for a long time," I replied. We went through the documents one by one in his office. He took notes, copied files, asked questions. By noon, 2 other officers had joined us, one from the Financial Crimes Division, another from the DA's office. The silence between them said enough. They knew what they were holding was airtight. "This will open a full investigation," Grant said, sliding the last page into a folder. "She won't be able to bury this." I nodded. That's all I wanted. The next few days moved like slow thunder. Statements were filed, interviews recorded, subpoenas drafted. Evelyn's name appeared in headlines I never wanted to read. Local businesswoman under federal investigation for fraud and forgery. I didn't watch the news, didn't answer the phone. The calls came anyway. Reporters, lawyers, people pretending to be friends. Evelyn tried too. First, a text. "We need to talk." Then another. "They're twisting everything." Then, "Charles, please think of the children." I didn't respond. The truth didn't need my permission anymore. One evening, Detective Grant called. "It's official. She's been indicted on multiple counts: fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit tax evasion. The evidence you gave us sealed it." I stared out over the lake as he spoke. The surface reflected a pale crescent moon trembling in the wind. "She'll blame me," I said. "She already has, but the paper trail tells another story." "Good," I said quietly. "For once, it's not my word against hers." When we hung up, I sat in the dark a long time. The house felt different now, emptier, but honest. Over the next week, the world around me moved on. People whispered her name in grocery stores. Lawyers scrambled to save what was left of Fletcher Holdings. And my children finally stopped defending the woman they'd once thought indestructible. Lily came by once, tears in her eyes. "She says you ruined her," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. I just stopped protecting her from the truth." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, I packed a small suitcase, just clothes, a few photographs, and Harold's letter. I was leaving Charlotte for a while, maybe for good. The city had become a mirror of everything Evelyn stood for, polished on the surface, rotten underneath. I moved through the house slowly, turning off each light, one by one. When I reached the front door, my phone buzzed on the counter. Evelyn. The screen glowed in the dark, her name lighting up like a ghost refusing to fade. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I stood still, watching it vibrate against the wood, the sound echoing through the empty rooms. Then, without touching it, I turned, opened the door, and stepped outside. The ringing followed me for a few seconds more, soft, desperate, fading into the night, until the only sound left was the wind moving over Lake Wiley.
Morning light has a way of forgiving things the night never could. It slips through the curtains before I'm ready for it, warm and quiet, brushing over the old wooden floor of my cabin by Lake Wiley. The world feels slow here, gentle, honest. It's been 6 months since I left Charlotte, 6 months since the headlines faded, since Evelyn's name stopped echoing through courthouse halls. Fletcher Holdings was dismantled piece by piece. The papers called it a necessary ending. I call it something simpler: justice, served quietly. The mornings are my favorite part of this new life. I wake before the birds, make coffee strong enough to feel alive again, and sit on the porch with a notebook on my knee. I've filled 2 of them already, pages of reflections, not regrets, lessons written for no one but myself. Today, the lake is calm, smooth as glass. The sunrise paints it gold. I pick up my pen and write slowly, letting the words come the way the truth did, patiently. She tried to bury me under her lies, but truth grows roots deeper than greed. I pause, reading it back to myself. It's not poetry, but it's honest. And honesty, I've learned, is its own kind of wealth. From here, I can still see the faint outline of Charlotte in the distance, the city that once owned by name. Its skyline glimmers under the morning haze, all shine and silence, like a promise that forgot what it promised. Sometimes I wonder if Evelyn ever thinks about the lake. She hated it here. Too quiet, too simple. Maybe that's why I loved it. I don't know where she is now. The last thing I heard, her lawyers were negotiating plea deals and selling off properties to cover restitution. The empire she built on deception turned to dust. I never testified against her. I didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself.
Lily still visits on weekends. She brings her son now, a boy with my eyes and her courage. Daniel calls sometimes too. The shame in his voice is gone. He's found peace in a way that took me a lifetime to earn. We don't talk about Evelyn anymore. Some stories don't need retelling. They just need to end. I close the notebook and set it aside. The porch creaks as I stand. The lake ripples under a light breeze, and the sound of cicadas hums from the trees, steady and familiar. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm waiting for something. There's no next step, no hidden plan, just the quiet truth of a man who's finally stopped running. I walk down to the dock, bare feet against cool wood. The air smells of pine and sunlight. Across the water, a single heron glides low, its reflection stretching across the golden surface. I think about all the years I spent fighting to be heard, defending myself against someone who couldn't live without control. In the end, she taught me the very thing she feared most, that freedom isn't found in power. It's found in letting go. The breeze shifts, carrying the faint scent of rain. I look back at the house, the porch light glowing softly, the door closed the way I left it. Some doors are meant to be opened. Others teach you why they should stay closed. I draw in a slow breath, steady and full, and say it out loud to no one but the morning air. Some doors were meant to stay locked. The lake answers in ripples. The cicadas keep singing. And for the first time, the silence feels like home.